Recap. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 1193. Chapter Verse. Within the silent expanse of the ancient palace, countless orbs of radiant light drifted through the air like a galaxy brought to life. Each orb shimmered with an ethereal glow, and within their depths, endless characters churned and shifted, forming fragments of profound knowledge. Yet these characters were hazy, as though veiled by the passage of time itself, making them difficult to decipher at a glance. The 7 king tiers stood beneath this celestial display, their gazes burning with intensity as they tried to discern the secrets hidden within. Those are all cultivation techniques, one of them exclaimed, his voice trembling with disbelief. I recognize that one, the great net mind refreshing technique. And there, the purple smoke palm technique. Look, the bamboo heart sword. Names of legendary arts spilled from their lips one after another as recognition dawned upon them. Each orb held something extraordinary, something that could shake the very foundation of the martial world. Then suddenly, what? He Tao's voice rang out, sharp and stunned. Virtuous Origin Heart Sutra. His eyes widened as though struck by lightning itself. I once glimpsed a fragment of this technique in an ancient sect. Even they only possessed a damaged and incomplete version. This is a supreme cultivation method. If mastered, one's origin power would gain the force of lightning itself, capable of tearing through any defense. A heavy silence followed his words. The Virtuous Origin Heart Sutra, a name buried in the depths of history, passed down through countless generations before vanishing into obscurity. Only scattered remnants remained in ancient sects, incomplete and fractured, and now, here it was again. But was it whole, or merely another fragment? If it were complete, its value would be beyond measure. At that very moment, realization struck all 7 of them like a thunderclap. This was no ordinary place. This was a treasury of unimaginable worth, a vault of lost inheritances. Shoo, without hesitation, Shen Zhu'er moved first. Her figure blurred as she shot upward like a streak of lightning, her hand reaching toward one of the glowing orbs with astonishing speed. She was close, so close her fingertips nearly brushed its surface. But the orb trembled. Then, like a startled fish, it darted away with even greater speed. Shen Zhu'er's grasp closed on empty air. She descended back to the ground, her expression darkening, her hands empty. The others were stunned. Shen Zhu'er's strength was not inferior to any of them. If even she failed to seize an orb, then what chance did the rest of them have? A chilling realization settled over them. Obtaining these inheritances would not be simple. Without another word, all 7 king tiers chose their targets. Each fixed their gaze upon a desired technique, then leapt into motion. In an instant, the palace erupted into dazzling brilliance. The orbs, once drifting calmly, now sprang to life, weaving through the air like schools of agile fish. Light streaked in every direction, crossing and intertwining, dazzling the eyes and confusing the senses. Figures flashed. Hands reached. But again and again, they grasped at nothing. After a long struggle, the 7 finally slowed, then stopped altogether. As though responding to their stillness, the orbs gradually settled once more, returning to their tranquil state, suspended in the air like distant stars. They're impossible to catch, someone muttered. Frowns deepened across their faces. Even as king tiers, individuals who stood at the pinnacle among their peers, they found themselves utterly powerless in this moment. Then, shoo, shoo, shoo! Without warning, 7 orbs suddenly trembled and shot toward them. Startled, Linghan and the others reacted instinctively, reaching out. Pop, pop, pop! Each of them caught an orb with effortless ease. A stark contrast to before, confusion flickered across their faces. Why? No matter how hard they had tried earlier, they had failed. And now, the orbs had come to them willingly? Before they could ponder further. Pop, 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 pop! The orbs shattered in their hands. In an instant, a torrent of information flooded their minds. Countless characters, endless images, streams of profound knowledge surged into their consciousness, forming complete cultivation techniques and martial arts within their very souls. Linghan closed his eyes briefly as he absorbed the inheritance bestowed upon him. What he received was a movement technique, the star-plucking step, a name that carried boundless ambition. At its peak, one could ascend to the heavens with a single step, pluck the stars from the sky, and grasp the moons within their palm. Though exaggerated in its description, the implication was clear. This was a supreme technique of unimaginable depth. But how far one could go with it depended entirely on one's comprehension and destiny. Ling Han carefully skimmed through the technique within his mind. Immediately, he felt its complexity. It was vast, intricate, profound beyond measure, not something that could be understood overnight. Years would be required, perhaps even decades. Such was the nature of immortal-level techniques. Whether formations, pill recipes, or movement arts, they all demanded immense time and effort to comprehend, refine, and master. Yet instead of frustration, a faint smile appeared on Ling Han's lips. He possessed the reincarnation tree. Time was the least of his concerns. And the longer a technique required to comprehend, the greater its value. Around him, Shen Juer and the others also revealed expressions of joy. It was clear, each of them had obtained a supreme inheritance. Their gazes lifted once more toward the countless orbs still floating above. Greed, determination, a burning desire ignited within their hearts. If the random orbs that came to them contained such powerful techniques, then what of the countless others still beyond their reach? Their value must be immeasurable. But no further orbs approached. It was as if those 7 were rewards, granted only because they had opened the gates to this palace. Unwilling to accept this, the 7 king tiers launched themselves into the air once again, attempting to seize more. But the result was the same. Empty hands. No orb moved toward them. No inheritance revealed itself. Disappointment settled heavily upon them. Before their eyes lay a sea of treasures, yet they could only watch, unable to claim them. A torment worse than deprivation. "Ha! Do you desire more cultivation techniques?" A voice suddenly echoed through the palace. Soft, calm. It seemed to whisper beside their ears, yet also echoed from an unfathomable distance. The 7 king tiers stiffened. "Who's there?" They shouted in unison, their voices sharp with vigilance. "Show yourself!" "Stop hiding!" Their eyes scanned the surroundings, senses fully extended. Then the voice came again. "You wish to see me so badly?" Darkness began to gather. Threads of black aura seeped into existence, curling through the air like smoke. This aura was eerily familiar. It was the same sinister energy that lingered outside the mystery realm. It carried with it the scent of death. The black aura condensed, twisting, shaping, until finally it formed a human figure standing among them. "Who are you?" Shi Angguo demanded immediately, his gaze sharp as a blade. "I," the figure replied calmly, "am the owner of this place." The 7 exchanged glances, then, as one, they bowed. "Our respect, senior." Though proud, they were not fools. They had received inheritances from this being. Showing courtesy was only natural. Yet none of them knelt. The figure raised a hand. "Raise your heads." His form flickered as he spoke, unstable, as though it could dissipate at any moment. "All of you possess extraordinary talent," he continued. "You are worthy of inheriting my legacy." Once again, the 7 bowed. "Thank you, senior." "But," the figure's voice shifted, gaining a subtle edge, "I require only one successor." Silence fell. "Which of you," he asked slowly, "is willing to take me as master?" The 7 king tiers glanced at one another, their thoughts racing. Then one of them spoke cautiously. "May we ask, whom senior intends to choose?" Despite his claim of ownership, none of them were willing to blindly trust him. They were king tiers. Their judgment was not so easily swayed. "If I were to choose," the figure said, deliberately pausing as his gaze swept across them one by one, observing their reactions. Yet their expressions remained calm, unmoved. "I would choose him." A finger lifted, pointing directly at Ling Han. Ling Han blinked. "Me?" Then, without hesitation, he shook his head. "My apologies," he said calmly. "I have no intention of acknowledging a master." The answer was firm, unyielding. Even if he sought a master, he already possessed one of unparalleled status within his black tower, a saint. There was no need to accept another. The figure froze. For a brief moment, genuine astonishment flickered across his face. Rejected. He had been rejected. To most, becoming the disciple of such an existence would be an irresistible opportunity. Yet Ling Han had declined without even a moment's hesitation. The figure slowly turned his gaze. "What about you?" His finger pointed toward Shen Juer. She hesitated for a fleeting instant, then spoke. "This junior already has a master. I cannot accept another." Another refusal. The figure's expression darkened, his form wavering slightly as though struck by an unseen force. "And the rest of you?" he demanded, turning toward the remaining 5. The 5 exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they all shook their heads. Suspicion lingered heavily in their hearts. This being had appeared too suddenly. His offer came too easily. And such things were never without a price. The will that lingered within the palace took form like a wavering phantom, its presence flickering with an ancient arrogance that had yet to fade. Yet now, beneath that calm exterior, there was a trace of irritation. No, something deeper. A wounded pride. 7 stood before him, each one a king tier among the mountain river realm, each one carrying themselves with the bearing of someone who had conquered countless trials. And yet, not a single one was willing to bow. Did they truly believe themselves comparable to Genesis tier saints? The thought gnawed at him. Since none of you are willing to acknowledge me as your master, the figure said, his voice devoid of warmth, then the secret techniques hidden within this palace shall have nothing to do with any of you. His gaze swept across them slowly, deliberately, savoring their reactions. When he noticed the subtle tightening at the corners of their eyes, a faint, knowing smile tugged at his lips. He had lived for ages. He knew the weakness of cultivators. Temptation. No one could resist it forever. Of course, he continued, his tone softening just enough to stir curiosity, these techniques are of no use to me now. It is not impossible for me to pass them on. He paused again, always pausing at the brink of revelation, letting desire build like pressure before a storm. Ling Han's eyes sharpened. He stepped forward slightly and spoke with calm clarity. It seems Senior has something in mind. The phantom smile deepened. Not conditions, exactly, he said, almost lightly. I have long since passed from this world. What remains here is merely a fragment of will, a fading echo. I cannot retrieve the techniques myself, but if one of you were to lend me your body for a moment, I could gather them. His gaze turned heavy, pressing upon them like a silent mountain. If any of you desire these techniques, then allow me to borrow your body. Otherwise, there is nothing more I can do. Silence fell. The air thickened. Ling Han and the others did not speak, but their expressions grew grave. Each of them understood what lay beneath those honeyed words. Borrow? No, this was possession. He made it sound harmless, just a moment, just a simple task. But what if he did not leave? What if the will he spoke of was not merely a wisp, but a fractured soul waiting for a vessel? To let such a thing enter one's body was no different from offering one's life. Who among you desires these secret techniques? The phantom asked again, his voice laced with a seductive pull that crept into the heart. Still, no one answered. Instead, the 7 quietly shifted, their auras tightening, their stances turning defensive. They trusted nothing. No one? The figure sighed, as though disappointed by their stubbornness. I had hoped to resolve this in a more elegant manner. His gaze sharpened. But it seems I must resort to something less pleasant. His eyes landed on Ling Han. You, he said, pointing directly at him. Your physique is extraordinary. I have wandered the world for countless years, yet I have never seen such a body at the Mountain River tier. Even throughout history, such a foundation is unheard of. A flicker of interest glimmered in his gaze. However, your divine sense is equally formidable. Erasing it would not be easy. Ling Han met his gaze without flinching. You flatter me, Senior, he replied calmly. But the world is vast beyond measure. Who can say there are no others greater than I? His tone was polite, but distant. He had already seen through the situation. This so-called remnant had tried persuasion first. Only after failing did he consider force. That alone revealed a critical truth. He was no longer the overwhelming Eternal River tier expert he once had been. Otherwise, why bother coaxing a group of Mountain River cultivators? The Phantom did not grow angry. Instead, he merely chuckled softly. I have seen more prodigies than you can imagine, he said, his tone carrying ancient confidence. And yet, his gaze shifted. It fell upon Shenzhuer. This young lady possesses a remarkable bloodline, he mused. A great pity. Her divine sense is shielded by a profound secret technique. I cannot breach it in my current state. One by one, his eyes moved across the 7. He spoke of each of them, their strengths, their hidden advantages, their innate gifts. Every word struck true. Every observation was precise. Ling Han and the others felt a chill creep into their hearts. This being's insight was terrifying. Finally, his gaze stopped on Wu Jie. You, he said. There was no admiration in his voice this time, only cold assessment. Among the 7, you are the weakest. Your talent is the lowest. You are far from ideal. A pause. but you are the easiest to take." The moment the words fell, his body dissolved into a streak of black light. It shot forward like a bolt of darkness. Wu Jie had already been on guard. With a roar, he crossed his arms before his chest, unleashing his full power. Nearly 90 divine patterns erupted around him, weaving together into a shimmering defensive net. The very laws of heaven and earth trembled in his grasp. Yet, it was useless. The black light pierced through everything. It ignored the divine patterns, slipped through the regulations, and plunged straight into Wu Jie's open mouth. "Ah!" A scream tore from his throat. His limbs flung wide, his head snapping back as though seized by an unseen force. Black mist surged into him, coiling around his face like living smoke. The sight was grotesque. "Move!" Ling Han shouted. The 6 others did not hesitate. God tools flashed into their hands, and they struck as one, their attacks slicing toward the writhing black aura. "Ka-ka-ka!" A wild, disdainful laugh echoed directly within their minds. "You think such trifling power can harm me? You are still several epochs too young." Their attacks passed through the mist. They cut nothing. No matter how they struck, the black aura shifted and twisted, reforming again and again like an untouchable phantom. Meanwhile, it continued pouring into Wu Jie. His stomach began to swell, at first slightly, then rapidly, until it bulged outward grotesquely, growing to the size of a massive cauldron. His entire body distorted, veins bulging across his skin, his eyes nearly bursting from their sockets. Agony twisted his features. His face flickered, one moment his own, the next, that of another, unfamiliar, Coldian. It was as if 2 souls battled within a single shell. Then, with a final creeping surge, the last strand of black aura vanished into his body. Instantly, his stomach shrank back to normal. Everything stilled. Wu Jie stood there, motionless, his expression blank. He looked at Ling Han and the others, confusion flashing across his face as he slowly raised a hand. But before he could speak, he clutched his head and screamed. A terrifying aura erupted from within him, cold, sinister, heavy with death. It was the same oppressive presence that filled the yellow spring outside, a force that seemed to drag all life toward oblivion. "Damn it!" someone shouted. "He's being possessed. And once it's complete, his strength will skyrocket." Fear rippled through the group. Possession was a rare and desperate act. What cultivator would willingly abandon their own body? It meant forfeiting their cultivation. And lifespan was tied to the soul, not the flesh. Taking a younger body would not grant new life. Yet this being, if he succeeded, he might regain the power of an eternal river tier expert. A terrifying thought. "Kill him!" Wu Wentong's voice rang out, resolute and without hesitation. Wu Jie could not resist, and they could not extract the invader. There was only one path left. "Kill him!" Shen Juer echoed, her expression cold. Though disciples of the majestic heaven sect were forbidden from killing one another, this was no longer Wu Jie. He was becoming something else, something monstrous. They had to destroy him before that transformation was complete. Without another word, the 6 king tiers surged forward together, their killing intent erupting as one, racing toward the writhing figure at the center of the storm.